Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Isaac Warren. I'm the Assistant Director of Digital Communications at the Illinois Association of School Boards. And with me today, I have Dr. Nakia Hall. And today we're going to be talking about how school boards can promote equity and inclusion. So, Dr. Hall, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Isaac. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited about our conversation.
I am too. Well, let's just dive right into it. Let's start by defining what equity is, and maybe even go a step further in defining what equity is as it relates to the work of a school board member.
You know, I get this question a lot. And when I am presenting or I'm speaking, I feel it's very important to establish a definition of equity. You know, if you walk to somebody on the street and you say, hey, what's equity? They're probably going to think of equity in a house, equity when it comes to banks, you know. So that was a challenge, of course, when we adopted that term in the world of education, just making sure people understand we're not talking about dollars and coins. You know, we're talking about giving students what they need and filling gaps that may exist. So one of the biggest questions is, what's the difference between equity and equality?
Yes.
Because it's very easy to get them confused. And you will hear people say, there's no equality in equity. So there's some truth to that, but it's not entirely, truthful. So equity is giving students what they need. That's educational equity, regardless of their background, their history, their identity. We want to make sure that they are getting probably a more customized education that will help them succeed, be successful in academics as well as, behavior. And so what does that mean? That means that if I have a student that has a certain need, I'm going to provide that. I'm going to make sure that I get those resources together so that that student can be, successful. So what that means is it may not look exactly how it would look with another student, because I'm meeting that specific need. And when you really think about it, I like to break it down, give the example sometimes of I have 4 children. And I will say, I have 2 girls and 2 boys. So Brianna's the oldest. So if Brianna, has acne and Brendan, the second oldest, has a cold, if Christian had COVID and Kennedy, there's nothing wrong with her, would I give them all cough medicine? That's equality. I wouldn't do that. Brianna has acne. I'm going to give her some acne medicine or take her to a dermatologist, right? Brendan has a cold. I might give him cough medicine if he's coughing, but if he's not, I wouldn't. Christian having COVID, which he actually did at one point, was coughing a lot. So yes, we're going to give him the cough medicine. And Kennedy, I'm not going to give her something that she doesn't need.
Sure.
So that's really what equity is. First, determining what those needs are and then supplying, those resources for our students.
Gotcha. And I really do like that illustration. I think I've seen like a graphical illustration of, I'm sure you're familiar with it, with the boxes and the children looking over the fence. And like each child is a different height, so they need different sized boxes to address that so they can all equally see over there. So they're given... Because at the end of the day, the goal of equity is ensuring every child, educational equity at least. And it's that the idea that every student should have an opportunity or be provided the opportunity to succeed. And some students need additional support depending on multitude of factors in their own lives.
And you said a key word, you said every. That's the equality part of equity. So each and every, that means everybody. That's what's equal. We're paying attention to what everyone needs, not just a certain group, not just a certain student. We are going to pay attention to every student and give them what they need. And you mentioned that very famous picture depicting equity, and I'm not sure if you know, but it's come under some challenges, because some people will say, well, why is there a fence there in the first place? So they'll say, let's remove these barriers, so our students can have the access that you were talking about and the opportunities, because, in education, we start off really strong and somebody's going to start coming up with another way to look at it. That's one of the things I love about education. We're always evolving. But I think the overall thought is let's remove those barriers and provide what our students need so they can be successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. We kind of touched on this briefly, but there's another component to what we're talking about today, which is the inclusion part of equity.
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on that when you mentioned applying it to every student. How would you define educational inclusion, and how exactly would you say that could be measured empirically?
In talking with some of the districts, especially, I was a former school board member and very involved in IASB as a chair of the Three Rivers division. And that afforded me the opportunity to connect with a lot of districts in my division, but also, across the state. And so I've had a lot of conversations with school districts. And I would like to say that, at Joliet 86, they define inclusion as when students see themselves in the curriculum, their physical surroundings, and the broader environment in which diversity is honored and all individuals are respected. And I love their definition because it hits the nail right on the head. Students need to feel included the moment that they step on school grounds, not even just coming through the door, but the moment that student steps on school grounds, they should feel like I belong here. And how do they feel that way? Well, what are we doing to make sure that they feel they belong there? We can have, school pride and all those things, but when they sit in those seats and they're receiving instruction, do they feel included? And that means that are my needs being met? So for me, inclusion is directly connected to diversity and equity. I always say that we're going to have a diverse population no matter what.
Right.
And diversity is not just race. We have to, make sure that we clarify that, which a lot of people go straight to race. But there's so many elements of diversity. It could be your race, it can be your gender, it can be your income level, it can be your background, the town that you live in, the language that you speak. And when you have diversity, you've got to get to a place where those diverse components and elements feel included. That's the end result. And then on top of that, do they feel like they belong as well? But the way to get from diversity to inclusion is through equity. And that's in your equitable practices, procedures, your policies. So equity, I always say, is the conduit between diversity and inclusion. And in order to make sure that, students feel included, you have to hear from them. We push student voice and for districts and board members to, look at ways where in collaboration, in partnership with the superintendent, of course, ways where student voice, parent voice, staff member voice, multiple voices on the school board, multiple voices on the cabinet are included, because how else do we know unless we ask? Exactly.
Yeah, we need to get that feedback, not just from students, but from all invested parties to ensure that the work of EDI is being carried out properly and that we're meeting the expectations of really the community, if you think about it like that.
Absolutely. And, when you think of measuring inclusion, because that can be, a tough one. Well, how do we know? Like I said, first asking. When I think of Lincoln Elementary School District in Calumet City, when they have programs and events, they do exit surveys. And they point blank ask, their parents and their attendees, certain questions that helps them know and understand, did they feel included? Is this a programming that they feel was valuable and reflective of their needs? Also, a lot of districts are doing equity audits, like we did here at IASB. I encourage school districts to start with an equity audit. How do you know where you need to go if you don't know where you are? Also, I encourage districts to always apply an equity lens to those decisions that are going to impact students. So you should be asking, things like, Is the program or event culturally aware? Is it reflective of the culture that you're serving, and not just the culture that you're serving? Because I feel like we have to get past, our front doors, not just the neighborhoods you're serving as well, but the world we live in, because our students are going to leave our communities and they're going to go out into the world. So it's past, just your front doors, asking, are these programs holistic? Are you thinking holistically and inclusively when you're making decisions about certain things? Is it opportunity driven? Is it providing opportunities, especially to those marginalized groups that tend to be left out? Is it inclusive and innovative? Is it considerate of certain things that you need to consider? If there is something going on in your community, in your schools, sit back and reflect on that. But you have to know what's going on. And then lastly, is it equitable? Is it something that will help create bridges or provide support and provide the needs for students?
And these are all really important factors to take into consideration. And it does really lead to my next question. You basically answered already, which is, why is equity and inclusion so important in public schools? And I think you make a really good point that it's not just about their ability to participate in the school functions, but really their ability to take that and participate in the world that they end up in outside the school and outside the classroom.
Mm-hmm. And, when you really think about, some of the things that our students are being challenged with. So, a couple of weeks ago, we did a webinar here at IASB on mental health and DEI. Mm-hmm. And I was sharing it with an individual, and they said, how does that go together? And my answer was, how does it not? Mm-hmm. So when you think of those things that are prevalent in your district, whether it's mental health issues, community issues, those are the things that are adding to your diversity within your school districts. And so that's why it's really important to have equity and equitable programming and like I said, procedures and processes and policies. I like to say the P's, because how do you take your diverse population and make them feel that this space has been created for them, and it's been created for them to succeed, and for them to not just succeed, but when they go on to their next phase of life, or when they leave that school district, they can then also impact that place as well.
Yeah, and that's really the most important thing. I think the biggest takeaway from this, from EDI work, especially with our students. So it seems like there are a lot of moving parts when taking into consideration what a school district needs to do to have proper equity, inclusion, diversity, and assessing all of that across all their schools. What's some of the work that IASB specifically has done to provide resources and information regarding equity and inclusion?
One of the things that I'm really proud of with us, I'll start with this one. So we have the statewide educational equity committee that is led by our state board, Illinois State Board of Education. And we had the opportunity as an association to have a voice on that. I really believe in, if there is a seat being provided for you to be at the table, you need to be at the table. So I think that does, a service for our members when we are involved in those statewide conversations related to educational equity. I am on that committee. I chair the learning conditions subcommittee for the statewide committee. And we have such authentic conversations, and we make recommendations to the legislature on behalf of students. So I want our members to know we have a voice in many spaces when it comes to educational equity in our great state. But some of the things I'm also proud of is, we have developed a resource list that can be located on our website. If you go on our website and just search educational equity, it will pull up everything on our site that has that in it. But we have some really good resources on there, some articles as well. And speaking of articles, We just did our equity journal edition. Was it November, right? Of last year, but it's still available. And that was mailed to our members. But in that edition, myself and Dr. Don Parker, who is a professional development provider for teachers and cultural responsiveness when it comes to pedagogy, as well as Dr. James Harden, who is at Champaign Unit 4, executive director of their community programming there. We all wrote articles. And I was very proud of that because I feel like, our internal EDI, Educational Diversity and Inclusion Committee, has been doing hard work. And that's something that we wanted to be able to support. And so to see that come, into fruition, was amazing. So to be able to work on those articles and provide that for our school board members was amazing. We also have the educational equity workshop, equity and educational imperative, that is available. We will come into the district and do this with our districts. We do have it where, sometimes it's just the superintendent and the school board members, but we've gotten a requests to do that with cabinet members as well, so I want to make sure that everyone understands that. And in this workshop, we talk about why educational equity is needed, what educational equity is needed in your district, and how to make it a reality in your district. And we have some pretty good candid conversations with our board members. And if you have those questions, this is the perfect way to get those answered and just talk with your board about these things so you can move forward in your educational equity journey. And, just when I think of even with our joint annual conference and the opportunity now to have the equity immersion event that we've done now for 2 years. And as a part of coming to the conference, our members can take part in that. And it is a world where you walk in and you are just immersed in that world of equity. And there's table talks and speaker corners and panels going on. We bring in community partners who oftentimes have great programming and services that districts can adopt and bring, into their district to help them close gaps related to social and emotional issues, as well as DEI issues. And so that has been proven to be a huge success with our association.
Yeah, I remember being at the Equity Immersion Workshop conference this past year and seeing all the activity, all the buzz. I mean, people are very excited about equity and are seeing the value in bringing it to their boards and developing they're just developing these great programs around it. We'll have links in the description to all those resources Dr. Hall has listed. So we'll make sure that everyone can have access to that. So if they have anything they want to bring to their board, by all means, definitely check out our website. And the workshop itself is also very cool. It's great how ISB has been given so many opportunities to make a difference in the work of Illinois equity, diversity, and inclusion. And it's very awesome that just how we've been able to have make a difference and serve on these boards to represent Illinois schools across the state and just to drive that sort of momentum to continue the work of equity so that everyone has the resources and opportunities available to them. Where can board members learn more about equity and inclusion? I've already listed quite a few resources on our website. Anything else you'd like to add?
You know what? One thing I've learned about our school board members and being a former one myself, we always want to connect with other board members. And I think it is valuable to learn what other boards are doing. I think of also in Champaign Unit 4, I know that they have adopted a resolution declaring racism a public health crisis. And that's a bold step, that they've taken. And oftentimes, when you're the trailblazer, people can look to you to see what is it that we should be exploring and looking at. Also, I mentioned doing an equity audit. I know at Crete-Monee, School District 201U, they've performed an equity audit that really influenced their strategic plan. So I do feel that boards, if you have not done a strategic plan, or if your strategic plan is outdated and needs to be updated, now is the time, to do that and incorporate educational equity as a priority in that strategic plan. So I think, doing your research and finding out what other boards are doing, just to have an idea of how other districts are addressing these issues, attending conferences. We do our annual conference, and that's one of the reasons why we were looking how much, more substance and programming can we offer that's related to educational equity. We have an equity track throughout the conference as well. Also, there's all types of opportunities to learn. We just did, like I said, a webinar here with IASB. We also have some more coming up, I believe, in a couple of months related to equity. And, those can be accessed by any of our members, so taking advantage of those learning opportunities, I think, is also key.
Yeah, ISB has plenty of resources covering all aspects of equity. So definitely check out our website for more in-depth discussions and content about that. Well, my last question for you, Dr. Hall, would be, what would you describe as the future of educational equity? Where do we go from here?
When I think of what some of our colleagues are dealing with in other states that, are putting in laws to actually stop the work of building educational equity, funding is being taken away. In some cases, I always shared that in Illinois, we are equity champions. I'm proud of the work that we've done, from the leadership in this state all the way to our school districts that are addressing it. Our equity journey continuum that was brought in under the leadership of our former state superintendent, Dr. Carmen Ayala, and carried on by our current state superintendent, Dr. Tony Sanders. I'm excited about ISB's Equity Summit that they started last year, and I'm happy to say that it's going to continue this year. That is a statewide equity event. And when we start doing things statewide, I believe that sends a message, and it sends a message to our school districts, and not just our school districts, but also every educational entity in this state. So I see us going totally up from here, just building the momentum. I'm connecting more and more every day with equity practitioners. I encourage those who are listening to get plugged into numerous opportunities to just grow in this work, because this world changes often. The world of DEI changes often. Terminology, all types of things, are going on, and it's exciting. It's exciting. And I believe that we will see equity ingrained in so many levels that it's not even going to be that major thing to talk about anymore, because it's just going to be, normal. And I always say equity is not foreign. It's not a new concept at all. It's something we do every day. How many times do we give somebody in our life something they need because they need it? How many times do we provide access, to something just because? So it's a everyday concept that I just see once we really, really, really get it ingrained, it's just going to become something that's so normal that it's not even, put out the way it is now.
I love that vision for the future. I think that having so many levels of our state involved in this work of equity, I think that it just really sets the foundation for us to serve as you said, champions of equity, but also serving as the shining example of how other states can implement equity in their states and their schools across the country. So that's just really exciting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Dr. Hall, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and discussing equity with me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Isaac. It's always great talking with you.
Thank you.